Well, thank you all for being here. Andrew, I don't know if you can hear me, but welcome, Andrew. It's great to have you on again. Okay, so, everyone, I can hear you, but I can't speak. Okay, cool. Andrew says he could hear us all, but he can't speak. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for being here. So, this course, it's a 5-week course called Positivity Bias. And it's based off of the teachings of the Rabbi and really focuses on different stories of the Rabbi because we can really learn so much through stories. And it really focuses on, how do we maintain this positivity bias even in the most challenging of times? So the first class focused on the fact that realizing that we are not stuck. It's very easy to feel that we are stuck in the situations that we are in, right? Because we are, none of us wanted to be in the situation. We're all kind of in this situation, and we could feel like, this is just, it's terrible for all of us. But the Rebbe helped us realize that there's no such a thing as a situation where we're stuck, and we brought that story of that group that was stuck in the airport in Detroit, and they called the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, there's no such a thing as a Jew being stuck. You're not stuck somewhere. If you're somewhere, you have a purpose over there. So the first thing is to realize that whatever situation we're in, how do we make the best out of that situation? And that was really what the first class was focused on. Then we had, last week, was realizing that we all have a bias. Every single one of us, sees the world through a lens. We're here in this world, and we see things the way whether it's our history, our upbringing, the stories that we tell ourselves, we all have a bias. And the natural way science shows is that we naturally lean towards a negative bias. And that's probably, throughout, just to be able to survive, it's a survival mechanism that we need to be protected from things that, bad things that happen. So we always remember the negative more than the positive. And you could have 10 positive things that happened to you today, but one negative, and that negative is going to stick with you. So, and we're going to focus on it, and we're going to zero in, and it's going to bring our whole day down, right? And it's going to change our mood. So we talked about realizing, number one, that we have this negativity bias, because when you realize you have a negativity bias, already half the solution. It says that the sages tell us that half the healing is knowing the sickness. So when we recognize that we have this negativity bias, now we know, okay, you know what? I need to shift the other way. Why am I focusing so much on the negative? Let me focus also on the positive, and even more on the positive, because we all have so much more positive in our lives than negatives. And that was really what the second class spoke about, and we brought some stories with that. Today, we're going to start with, today in the next 3, we really talk about the tools. What are the tools that we can use to really focus on the positive? And today what we're going to talk about is this idea of a good eye. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the great sages of the Talmud. He was actually in the Mishnah, even the times of the Mishnah, he sent out his students, 5 students to the world. And he said, I want you to go to the world and try to find what is the most important character trait that a person should have to live a good life, right? What is a good character trait? So what would you say over here? Anyone have some ideas? If you would say one rule, one way to live, one character trait that we should all have that's going to help us live good, upright, meaningful, moral lives, what would you say that is? Anyone want to give a thought on that?
Maybe kindness to others. I don't know.
Kindness to others. Beautiful.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Integrity.
Integrity. Beautiful. So they all went and they searched and they searched, and they all came back with different answers. And one of them came back with an answer, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai really appreciated it. And it was one of the leading students of Rabbi Akiva. His name was Eliezer ben Horkanus. So Eliezer ben Horkanus, he comes back and he says that I have found that a good eye is more important than anything else. Ayin tova in Hebrew, a good eye. Because when you can see the good in everything, then you will be, right? If you see the good in someone else, you'll be kind to them. If you can see the good in a situation, you'll be positive. Always finding the good, right? Having a good eye. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, this I appreciate more than anything. And there's a great joke that is shared. There was a rabbi once who was his first day on the job, and there was a funeral, and he didn't know the person because it was his first day on the job. He didn't know the people in the community, and no one was getting up to say a eulogy. So the rabbi says, "Listen, could someone please get up who knows the deceased and share something about the deceased? You know, before we do the funeral." Nobody is getting up. Nobody is saying anything. So the rabbi says, listen, somebody has to get up and say something positive, at least one thing positive about the deceased before I do the funeral. Suddenly from the back of the funeral home, someone yells out and says, his brother was even worse. That was the finding the positive. They couldn't find anything positive, and that was the only positive they could find. It's a joke because, sometimes it's hard to find the positive in situations. It's really hard to find the positive. But really, that's our job in life. And there is a story, the story to begin, the first story that I'm going to share today of the Rabbi, is there was once a chassid, not Chabad, who came to the Rabbi, and he shared with the Rabbi, he said that the tractate in Chagiga shares and says that there's a statement. It says, even the sinners of Israel are filled with seeds like a pomegranate. And this chassid, this Jew, tells the Rebbe, I don't understand the statement of the Talmud. If they are sinners, right? Sinners of Israel, they're called. How could they be filled with seeds, with mitzvahs, filled with good deeds, like a pomegranate is filled with good seeds? I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. How either they're sinners or they're filled with good deeds. How could they be called sinners? And yet you say that they are filled, the Talmud says that they are filled with mitzvahs, like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. That's a lot of seeds, that's a lot of mitzvahs. The Rebbe heard his question, and the Rebbe stopped, got very serious for a moment, and the Rebbe began to cry. And the Rebbe said, I have a different question every time I read this passage from the Talmud. My question is if these Jews are filled with seeds of mitzvahs, right? Filled with mitzvahs, like the seeds of a pomegranate, how could we call them sinners of Israel? That was the Rebbe's way of seeing things. The Rebbe always saw the positive. The Rebbe was telling this person, why are you focused on the negative? You seem to be bothered by the fact that we're giving them such credit. We're calling them, we're saying they're filled with seeds, like mitzvah, the mitzvahs like seeds, when they're called sinners. The Rebbe said, I don't know, that you're looking at it that way, I look at it the other way. How could we call them sinners, right? If they are filled with seeds like mitzvahs like seeds. And this is a beautiful story because this was the Rebbe's way. The Rebbe, anyone who came to the Rebbe always saw the positive in them. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, because the lesson today is about we see what we are looking for, right? How many times do you know someone who can't see the positive in a situation? All they see is, you're trying to show them something good, but all they could see is the negative, right? They could only see the negative. Why? Because they already came with a story. They already came with a narrative, and they're just using this in order to prove their narrative. I'm going to see if I could share my screen over here. Hold on. Preview. How do I do this?
It's the green button at the bottom, maybe. So if you
I did share screen, and then I have to do something here.
You have to select the window that you want to share, Rabbi.
You still see me?
Yep, we still see you.
Okay. No, so let's try this.
You see a green button that says share screen, and then if you press that at the bottom, then you choose your window to share. So it's at the bottom of your...
this?
Not yet.
No? Okay.
You still see, we see you.
Okay. How do I get back to this? Oh my gosh, now I can't get back. Hang in there. We'll figure this out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, when you roll your mouse, hopefully it shows. At least it does on mine. It's green with a little arrow up that says share screen.
Oh, and now, yeah, no, I see that, but then it tells me what do you want to share, and I have a window open, and it was supposed to go pretty easily to that one, but it's not working. But now I can't even get back into Zoom, so I don't even see the Zoom meeting. Hold on.
We're gonna all.
Felicia, how do I get back into Zoom? Oh, here we are. Okay, I'm back in Zoom. Okay. Let's see if this was going to work over here. Let's see if this is going to work. Okay. So, looking at this picture over here, there's a lot of research done onto this. What do you see when you look at this picture? What's the first reaction? Anyone think for a moment what you see, and then share.
A young
What do you
girl.
see?
A young girl and then an old lady.
Brian, what do you see?
I see both. Yeah, the young girl, and then if you look at it a different way, it looks like an old woman.
Oh, right. Okay, good. Gary, you see it?
Yeah. I agree. So
you agree? So they did a lot of research into this, and a lot of people first either see the older woman, or they only see the young girl. And there's a lot of studies like this, but basically it's sort of, what do you see first? What is your first thing that you see? And it's based off of a lot of again, the way that we see the world. If we're looking for the positive or we're looking for the negative. So if it's the case, that you see what you're looking for, the greatest tool that we can have in forming a positivity bias in our lives, seeing the good in every situation, is training ourselves to see the good in others and training ourselves to see the good in every situation. There's actually an interesting teaching. It says in the Code of Jewish Law that if you are having a hard time waking up in the morning, right, what do? If a few days go by or a long time even passed, and it's very hard for you to get up in the morning, you have to get up, what do? So the Talmud says that actually the Code of Jewish Law says an idea, gives you some practical tips of how to get out of bed. And it says for 3 days in a row, practice, just 3 days, not forever, 3 days, that immediately when you wake up, right away get up and start your day. Meaning don't turn over, don't hit the snooze button, just get right out of bed. The Talmud says, actually, again, the Code of Jewish Law says that if you do that for 3 days, you'll cure yourself of being, having a hard time getting up in the morning. You'll train yourself. Just a few days of doing it, it already becomes second nature, and it's a very powerful thing because it really, tells us something, that may be counterintuitive. Sometimes we think our habits are so deep, right? How do I break this habit? And it's because the story that we tell ourselves, right away we go to that negativity. Oh, I can't get up in the morning. Look, I haven't been able to get out of bed in months. But yet 3 days of doing it, suddenly it breaks that pattern and it trains us in a new way. And the same thing is with our positivity bias. And really, this is what we're going to talk about today. But more importantly, try it as an exercise, even now, during this class and afterwards, right away afterwards. Try to see every single thing that comes in front of you, right away go to the positive. Right away go, train yourself for 3 days or 3 situations and just really go straight to the positive. And especially when something negative comes up, right away try to see, is there a positive? And there's always a positive that we can find in every situation. So I'm going to share a few stories. And these are stories about people, because so many times it's the people in our lives, or situations that involves others that really bring us down, that upsets us, someone, a rude neighbor, or, someone who just, a coworker, or a friend, a spouse, a family member who could really hurt us. So, and could bring us down again, that we go right to that negative place and we forget about all of the positive experiences and all the good. So there was once a photographer. His name was Levi Frieden. He was one of the photographers of the Rebbe. There were many people who would take professional photographs of the Rebbe. And a lot of them were just, that they did it as a hobby. A lot of them, it was their job. They were professional. The Rebbe never hired anyone to take pictures of him, but people would take pictures of the Rebbe and they would sell it, or they would display it in museums. One of the picture behind me is actually from a very famous photographer who a lot of his work is in museums. And so Levi Frieden was one of the photographers of the Rebbe. One year in Israel, he did an exhibit in Bar Ilan University, and also at a space in Israel that was for journalists. And it was all about pictures of the Rebbe, giving secular Jews in Israel a glimpse into a vibrant Jewish life, right? And what goes on in the Rebbe's court. And it was very well received in Israel. But there was one person who wrote in his book, he had a guest book, right? And one of the people wrote in the guest book, he made a comment. And his comment was, he writes, with all due respect to the superb photography, the subject you have chosen is extremely clerical and takes us back to primitive darkness of the Middle Ages. That's what he wrote. So it was a negative comment, right? Now, again, we know how it is. Here he got so many positive comments, but that negative comment really bothered him because, here he's showing all these beautiful pictures of the Rebbe and someone had to come along and see find something negative and had to write about it. He came to the Rebbe a few months later and he was very happy to share the book. He made a copy of all the pages of the guest book to share with the Rebbe all the feedback that he got from the people who came to the exhibit, and he thought the Rebbe would appreciate it. The Rebbe quickly glanced through the book. He's looking through the pages of the book, and in general, it was known the Rebbe was a speed reader. The Rebbe had the ability to really quickly look through things, like in ways you wouldn't even imagine. The Rebbe would flip quickly, and then the Rebbe would comment on something. And many people, it was well known that the Rebbe would look quickly through the book. You would think the Rebbe it was just like flipping through the pages, and then the Rebbe would start talking about it as if the Rebbe read the whole book. And there were many stories like that. So the Rebbe quickly looks at it, and the Rebbe sees right away that negative comment, right? So what is the Rebbe going to say? Here, it was about the Rebbe actually, right? What does he write? He says, again, the comment was, with all due respect to the superb photography, the subject you have chosen, this is the Rebbe he's saying it about, is extremely clerical and takes us back to the primitive darkness of the Middle Ages. So the Rebbe tells Levi Frieden, he says that I want you to tell this journalist, because it was a journalist who wrote this, and it said, please compliment the journalist on his strength of character. It takes fortitude to differ from the other perspectives, right? Everyone was being positive, and it took fortitude to defer from the other responses. And then the Rebbe said, but tell him also that not everything in the Middle Ages was dark. Right? That was the Rebbe's response. So here the Rebbe was able to, on one hand, take something which was so negative, right? The one negative comment, and you would think either the Rebbe would ignore it, or it would bother the Rebbe, right? The average person, it would bother them. But the Rebbe, not just that, the Rebbe said, use it as a compliment. The Rebbe said, I want you to go back to this person and compliment him on saying that he had the strength to stand out. And number two, on the positive, remind him that not everything in the Middle Ages was dark, right? Sometimes we look back at that time and we think everything was dark. The Rebbe reminded him that not everything during that time was dark. It was a dark time for the Jewish people, but there was many positive things even during that time, right? Judaism itself, that it survived during that time, is a positive. It's a beautiful thing. So here it's a beautiful illustration where the Rebbe had the ability, imagine we could train ourselves that, someone says something negative to us, see the positive, compliment them back instead of being upset at them, finding the good in another person. And the truth is that when we do this, it's not just for ourselves, but it actually affects the other person in a positive way. You know that there's a mitzvah in the Torah not to speak gossip or negative about another person. It's called lashon hara, not to speak negative about another person. So most people focus on the negative aspect of it, meaning, don't speak negative, don't speak negative, don't speak negative. And it's actually, it's a very strong topic in many communities. The Rebbe never chose to focus on this so much, even though the Rebbe spoke about it. The Rebbe always said that from this we see the power of our speech. That if our speech has the ability to cause negative, it actually says in the Talmud, it says negative speech about another person kills 3 people. It actually uses the terms kills 3 people. Hello, Ivy, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So it says, it uses the term, and it says that negative speech has the ability to kill 3 people. Kill. Very strong term. The Talmud doesn't usually speak in such a way. It says it kills the person who is speaking lashon hara. It says it kills the person who is listening to the negative, when someone's speaking negative about a third person. And it also kills the person who is being told about, right? Because even though it's involuntary, they're not doing anything wrong, it's the negativity that it has an effect. Now, obviously it doesn't literally kill, but it means it has a very powerful effect. There was the story actually of the Baal Shem Tov that one time his students 2 of them were fighting with each other. Or I don't know if it was his students, but he saw 2 Jews were fighting with each other. And one of them said to the other that ich will dir zureißen via fish. How do you say fish in Yiddish? How do you say, Gary, how do you say a fish in Yiddish?
On what?
How do you say a fish in Yiddish?
Kafilta.
So he says, I don't know. So he said one to the other, I'm going to rip you like a fish, right? So the Baal Shem Tov heard this, and he told his students to hold hands, right? And to close their eyes. And in a vision, right there, they saw how this one Jew was literally ripping the other person apart, like tearing them apart. And they were so shocked that they opened their eyes right away. And they realized that Baal Shem Tov said, when we say things, words, it has an effect. So the Rebbe said, if this is the case in the negative, right? In negativity, how much more so in the positivity, right? In positivity, because positivity is really stronger. Even though our pull is to negativity, positivity, good is always more powerful than bad. So the Rebbe would say that you should always speak good about another person. It's very easy even about our own children to say something negative. But the Rebbe said, always say something positive about your child. Not just in front of them, even not in front of them. When you're talking about them, don't talk about how challenging this child is and how chutzpahdik they are, disrespectful, or what a difficult child. Say positive. Find the positive and say the positive, because when you speak the positivity, it affects even that other person. So how much more so ourselves? That when we choose to focus, right, when a situation is happening and we go with our natural way, which is the negativity bias that we have, we're just going to go there. And then it brings us down because it's a negative place. And then what we're doing at the time is we're connecting more with our animalistic self, our lower self, instead of our divine selves, our higher selves. And instead of being brought up, we're being brought down. So the Rebbe reminded us that whenever a situation happens, even when you can look at this person and say, oh, this person is so disrespectful, this person is rude, try to see the positive, right? Maybe this person had a bad day. Maybe this person is struggling themselves. Maybe they had, who knows, their own upbringing, right? Who knows their past, their history, and what they went through, and why they have their own negativity bias. But we are going to continue a story of positivity. So another beautiful story. There was in the early years of the Rebbe's leadership in Brooklyn, New York, the Rebbe helped form a group to fight missionaries, because missionaries was very strong in the New York area. And there were also many fringe cult groups, religious cults in New York area, and they were really targeting Jews. Cecilia, welcome. Thanks for being here. So they were focusing and they were targeting Jews. So the Rebbe started an organization that was there to counter what these missionaries were doing and really to bring education to the Jewish community about this. And the Rebbe didn't put the name Chabad on it, and he didn't want his name associated with the organization, even though the Rebbe was very much involved in making this happen, because there were many Jewish groups that got involved in this, and the Rebbe wanted this, that everyone should be involved. And the Rebbe knew that for whatever reason, there was always, there's always politics involved with things, right? And there were some people that if Chabad was involved with it, they couldn't be involved with it, right? And the Rebbe knew this. And therefore, the Rebbe said, don't involve my name because I don't want that, some people should not be comfortable with it. This is an important organization. It's very, very important for the Jewish people, and it should be done. It was actually an interesting thing on this. The Rebbe would always say that when something needed to be said, Hasidim always felt they had to say things in the name of the Rebbe. The Rebbe said this and the Rebbe said that and so on. One time the Rebbe said that it's more important to not say things in my name, but that the message should be heard, right? As a chassid, as a student of your Rebbe, you always want to say in the name of your Rebbe what your Rebbe said. But the Rebbe says sometimes it's better not to say it in the name of the Rebbe, because if the message needs to be heard, right, it's more important that we say the message. So here was the Rebbe being very careful because he knew that this was an important cause and he didn't want that anyone should be left out. But there was one person, one rabbi from the Brooklyn area, who found out that the Rebbe was behind this, that the Rebbe was involved. And as soon as he found out that the Rebbe was involved, he removed himself from the organization and he started the same kind of organization, and he started pulling a lot of the funding that was going to this organization. He went to the donors and supporters of this cause, and he got them involved in his organization, which was really focusing on the same thing. So one of the organizers in the original group that the Rebbe was involved in, who was not Chabadi, was the chassid from a different Rebbe, was really bothered by this because he was very disillusioned. How could a rabbi from another organization, just because, some politics, because the Rebbe is involved, if it's a good cause and he was involved in until now, why would he go and start another group and pull funding from this one? He was very, very upset. And he felt he had to share with the Rebbe. So he went to the Rebbe and he shared with the Rebbe this whole thing. He said, I don't understand. How could a rabbi do this? And the Rebbe's response was unbelievable. This is the Rebbe's response. And this is after the Rebbe started this organization. The Rebbe said to him that you shouldn't judge another person. The Rebbe said, you have to understand, here's a rabbi who lost so much during the Holocaust. And he lost so many of his students. And he had a big yeshiva back in Europe. And he lost a lot of family members. And he came to America. And he's trying to build up his yeshiva, right, of Torah study here in America. And he doesn't want to lose some of his donors who he knows they have something against Chabad. And therefore, he chose to do it like this, but he didn't do it in a way, in an antagonistic way. He did it because this is what he needed to do, and he wanted to keep his legacy going and the legacy of what he built in Europe. And that was the Rebbe's response. Again, amazing that here the Rebbe, how many times, when somebody starts a competition with us or someone does something, clearly against, here the Rebbe started this and this person is, pulling funding and starting their own thing. And the Rebbe chose to not see the negative. The Rebbe only saw the positive and said, you know what, you have to see the bigger picture over here. And you have to understand this individual. And that's amazing to have that ability that in any situation to train ourselves, that instead of going to the negative place, to train ourselves to immediately go to the positive place. And it says actually that really we don't see with our eyes, see with our brains, right? Because the eyes, it just takes the picture, right? But it's really the brain that's interpreting that picture, right? The brain interprets the picture. So the more we can wire ourselves to see the positivity in every situation, right? We're stuck somewhere. This is for a reason. This is for a purpose. I have a toilet overflow during the corona. This didn't happen to me, but I know someone actually who was, during the whole coronavirus back in New York, and it was really not a hard time, and they were really not doing well. They actually were sick They didn't get tested, but they think it was with the coronavirus. And then their toilet overflowed, and their house was flooded. Okay, it backed up. All the sewer water backed up from the house, and they had to wait, to get a plumber during the whole coronavirus. It was very challenging, but you know what? They chose to focus on the positive. They survived. They're healthy. They're well, and maybe it happened for a reason. So we all have these opportunities that think for a moment. The last negative thing that happened to you, and how did you interpret it then, and maybe how could you interpret it if you had this mindset of what, there's good in here. I'm going to focus on the positive. Two more stories that I'm going to share today. And again, this is all from, there's a book called Positivity Bias, and it's a great book, and I recommend if you ever want to order it, you could order the book called Positivity Bias, and it's all stories of the Rabbi, just reminding us how we can focus on the positive. There's also the book Rabbi from Joseph Telushkin, which is just a great read, especially during these days. If you want a positive, good, easy read, the book is like that thick, so it'll give you plenty of good reading material. Guaranteed to put your day, begin your day, the middle of your day, the end of your day, it will put you in that positivity bias state. So another great story. There was a young boy. His name was Shelley Bayer. Was anyone over here kicked out of Hebrew school? Brian, you're sure you were? I didn't even hear. I can't even hear you. Your audio is mute. But I heard. I bet you said. I'm sure I was at some point.
I'm sure I was.
So
I'm sure I was asked to leave.
So
I got kicked out, but I got kicked. I got kicked out, but I got kicked back in too. So.
You got kicked back in. Okay. So Shelley Bayer was a young Jewish boy in the New York area, and he was really having a hard time staying in school. And his parents enrolled him in a Jewish day school, but he was chutzpahdik to the teachers. He always he always was getting in trouble, and they didn't even want to keep him in the Jewish day school anymore. And his mother didn't know what to do anymore. She was so fed up. She was so at loss of how to deal with this young boy that she decided she was going to make an appointment with the Rabbi, and she's going to bring her son to the appointment with the Rabbi. It just reminds me of this joke. I wasn't even going to share it, but this joke, it has to be shared. The joke, Ivy's already laughing. The joke number 79. So there's a joke. You know the joke about the numbers? There's a joke about, I think there was a rabbi once, and he would always share jokes. He would recycle the same jokes again and again. Does that sound familiar to anyone? So he would share the same jokes again and again, but he had a lot of jokes. So one day the congregant said that, you know what, instead of saying the joke, going through the whole joke, why don't you just give each joke a number and say, okay, joke 79, and then everyone will, we could all laugh. So one day the rabbi, they say, great idea. The rabbi gets up, he gives a speech, he starts off, he says, joke number 23. Nobody's laughing. He says, he looks at it again, he says, joke 23. Nobody laughs. He looks at it and says, I don't understand. We made up, we're going to do it like this. I said, joke 23, why aren't you laughing? They say, Rabbi, it's all about how you say the joke. It's all about the delivery. So, yeah, so that's the joke of the numbers. But there's a great joke of the boys the two brothers who were making a lot of trouble, and the mother didn't know what to do anymore. So she calls the rabbi, and the rabbi calls the first brother into the office and says, he puts his hands on the table and he says, young man, tell me, where is God? And the young boy doesn't know what the rabbi wants from him, just looking at the rabbi, what do you want from me? And the rabbi says even louder, tell me, where is God? And the young boy is like terrified. And again, the rabbi says the last time I'm going to ask you, where is God? And this young boy is terrified. He runs out of the rabbi's office and he runs home. He runs past his little brother and into the closet. And his little brother comes to the room and he knocks in the closet and he says, what's going on? What happened over there in the rabbi's office? And the little boy says, I don't know what happened, but all I know is that God is missing and they think we did it. This is the story of the young boys in trouble, but this is a real story. This is a story of Shelley Bayer, and he was, basically almost kicked out of school. They really wanted to kick him out for good because he was constantly making trouble and, making issues in class. So his mother makes an appointment with the Rebbe. And what do you think? What would the Rebbe tell this young man, right? Think to yourself, here is the Rebbe's opportunity. There's a young boy, and he's not doing well in school, and he's making a lot of trouble. He's a real typical troublemaker. And the Rebbe has his opportunity to speak to this young boy and to help him to stay in school. So Shelley Bayer says, Nancy, welcome. Great to have you here.
Sorry,
no problem. Thank you for being here. This young boy, his name is Shelley, he says that he was prepared, right? When you go to, when you're a real troublemaker and you already prepared for everything that's going to come, so you already have all your smart aleck answers. So he looks at the Rebbe and he decides he's going to speak first to the Rebbe. So he looks at the Rebbe and he says, "You're the Rebbe?" Like in like a smart aleck, boy, you're the Rebbe? And the Rebbe doesn't respond to this. The Rebbe doesn't get pulled into it. The Rebbe asks him a few questions. So the first question the Rebbe says is, "Are you a good boy?" Of course, he was ready for this question. He was ready for anything like this. He says, "No." So then the Rebbe says, "Do you like school?" "No." And then the Rebbe says, "Do you listen to your mother?" "No." The Rebbe suddenly stops and he looks at his mother and he says, "Wow, he always tells the truth. What a remarkable young man. He tells the truth. How often do we find people who tell the truth? He is willing to tell the truth. What a child." And that was the Rebbe's response. And he said immediately when the Rebbe responded like this, he said he was pulled back into his Judaism. That was the moment that he was pulled back into his Judaism. Because he was ready for the Rebbe to go on a whole lecture and why he has to listen in class and why he has to behave. But the Rebbe found the one positive, right? When everyone sees the negative, he's so challenging and he has so much chutzpah. The Rebbe was able to see the one positive in this young man is that he tells the truth. He doesn't like school. He doesn't listen to his mother. He's not a good boy, but he tells the truth. And this is what helped this young man. And this is, again, another beautiful story of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe taught us to see the positive in others. Always look for the positive. I'll finish with, I don't know what time it is, but I'll finish with one more story. We'll finish with one more story, and we can talk a little bit afterwards. But this is a story. It's funny. It actually involves Fidel Castro, but this was before people even realized, how, if you want to say, how much of a troublemaker he was, how much of a tyrant he was. So there was a young boy in Pittsburgh. His name was Yale Butler. It was in 1960. He was from a prominent Orthodox family, and he was 12 years old at the time, and he was a really good writer. And he really always liked to stand out from everyone. He was very motivated. And he started a paper, and he just like a newspaper. And he decided that in his first article, he is going to do a story, and it's sort of like a humorous story. And it was about a Chabad person who lived in the community in Pittsburgh, who he would always walk around with an army jacket and an army hat, and he had an untrimmed beard. And everyone thought that he looked exactly like Fidel Castro. And it was like the joke, they would call him Fidel Castro, because he had his army hat, his army jacket, untrimmed beard, and he had a look just like Fidel Castro. So, and again, it wasn't like, in those days, they didn't look at him as, how we look at Fidel Castro today. But, so he even got the nickname Castro. So he decided, this young boy, Yale Butler, decided that he's going to do a story on this, a play on this whole thing of their local Fidel Castro, the Chabad Chassid, this Chabad Jew who lived in the community. And he writes a story, and in the story, he it's this humorous story about how Fidel Castro needed the assistance from America, and he calls upon his Fidel Castro friend in Brooklyn, New York, and he gets him and all his Chassid friends to come to his aid and to bring the submarines, and that's a whole long story, but it's a spin on this Jew who looks like this Chabad Jew who looks like Fidel Castro, and so on. And he publishes this article, and it's this young boy, 12 years old, and he gets a lot of negativity in the community because the community felt, a lot of people from the broader community felt that this was somehow degrading to the Chabad community. It was a little bit of a mockery, and people felt it was crossing a line. And they told him that he has to apologize and he has to write something, another article, apologizing for what he did. However, the local Chabad rabbi, his name is Rabbi Yossi Spielman, knew this young boy, and he wasn't upset at all. He thought it was humorous, and that's it. It was nothing more than that. And he contacted this young man, and he said, "I think you should meet the Rebbe." And he thinks to himself, "Oh my gosh, not just that I do this article, I have to now go meet the Rebbe, the head spiritual leader of Chabad himself." And he said, "Listen, I think you would really appreciate it. It would be a great experience, and I think you should meet the Rebbe. If you're willing to come with me, I would take you to meet the Rebbe in New York." This was again in Pittsburgh in 1960. The young boy, he was an adventurous young boy. He said, "Okay, you know what? I'll go." He goes to the meeting, and he comes to the meeting, and at some point during the meeting, Rabbi Spiegel leaves the room, and he didn't expect this. He didn't expect that he's going to be left in the room alone with the Rebbe, just him and the Rebbe. And it was very well known. A lot of people who came to meet the Rebbe, when they went for a private audience with the Rebbe, it was a very, very overwhelming experience. A lot of people were sort of like shell-shocked, or they were at loss of words. And a lot of people were extremely calm. Also, at some point, they just totally calm, and the Rebbe was extremely related to them and connected with them in a way that they never imagined, and they had the most profound experiences of their life. But it was a very intense experience meeting the Rebbe. And here he gets left alone. He's 12 years old, and it's him and the Rebbe in the room. And the Rebbe starts to speak to him. And the Rebbe says that, "I hear that you're a great journalist." And he thinks to himself, wow, that's a very nice compliment from the Rebbe. But then he looks and he sees that in front of the Rebbe was his article that was published with this whole story of Fidel Castro. Was sitting right there on the Rebbe's desk right in front of the Rebbe. And he's like, "Oh no, the Rebbe is going to, go right into me right now and tell me, why I shouldn't have done what I did." But the Rebbe totally ignored that, didn't say anything about the article. And the Rebbe said that, "I've read your article, and I see that you really have a very great talent of writing. And I think it's very important when a Jewish person has the ability to write, it's their obligation to write about things that are going to bring about to Jewish unity, that are going to bring Jews together, and always focusing on the positive." And the Rebbe really gave him a beautiful message about how the gifts that we're given in life is not by accident, but it's really to utilize it. And the Rebbe said, "You have this amazing talent that you could use it to do tremendous things in the world." Later, this young man, he was so moved because he expected the Rebbe was somehow going to say something negative, and the Rebbe only focused on the positive. And because of this, he actually ended up using his talent in this very positive way, and he became a rabbi himself later on in life. And the Rebbe even commented many years later on his articles that he would write, that this rabbi would write, and he said that even from a young child, he was a very talented writer. And this was the way that the Rebbe was, that he never chose to dwell on the negative, even when it was clearly, something negative that you could find in it, and you could see the negative. We could focus on the negative. The Rebbe always focused on the positive. So this is the takeaway from today, that we have to train ourselves to focus on the positive, because we have that ability to do it. Meaning, what we see and the way we interpret it is what we want to see. So if we remember that we want to see the positive in every situation, then we will be able to do that. So again, to recap, the first class we spoke about, to realize that the situations we're in right now, not to look at it as that we're stuck in the situation, but that we're here for a reason. The second class, what we spoke about, is to recognize that we have a bias. All of us have a bias. We have a story that we tell ourselves. And naturally, we go to that negative place. Scientifically, it's proven that you could have 10 positive experiences and suddenly one negative, and the negative pulls us down. But if you recognize that that's the case, we also recognize we have the ability to change that bias and to focus on the positive if we choose to do it. And today we spoke about the first of the 3 tools of how do we cultivate this ability to see the positive. And the first one is to always look for the good. Train yourself to look for the good, because it's not the stories that happen to us that define our reality, but it's the way we interpret those stories. So if we choose and we take the next few days and the next few negative things that happen to us, and we really train ourselves to see the good, even when it's difficult, see the good in the other person, see the good in the situation, see the good even when everyone around you is seeing the negative, then we will train ourselves to move away from this negativity bias and to live a life of always going to that place. And like I shared with the story of, in Jewish law, it says if you want to get out of bed in the morning, you're having a hard time, do it 3 days in a row, right? Don't focus on the past. 3 days in a row, immediately when you wake up, right away get out of bed. And the code of Jewish law says that after 3 days of doing this, you already rewired yourself to do it. And it's the same thing with this. The more we do it, the more we'll rewire ourselves to see the positive in every situation. Thank you all for joining for today's class. And if anyone wants to share anything, you could unmute yourself and share. You could share a story, you could share a perspective, you could share a thought, you could share a takeaway. I'll share something. I mean, I think a lot of you who have heard my other messages on Facebook have probably seen this, but one positive from all of this that's been going on is that, I mean, and on one hand, I could also focus on the negative, and that's, why did I do this until now? But every day for the past few weeks, I've been going on a hike in the middle of the day here in Flagstaff, sometimes myself, sometimes with Chaya, sometimes with the kids. And it's just been beautiful just to get out in nature every single day and just have that balance of being out in nature and just appreciating it for what it is has been amazing. And it definitely wouldn't have happened because sometimes you have to be forced into something to do it. And it's been really good. And this is something I plan on taking with me forever, is to always take the time every day, spend a little bit of time out in nature, just getting out, just being there, because it balances out. We all live stressful lives. I don't know if anyone realizes this, but this is something that it's something important to realize, that even though we have more luxuries today than we've ever had before, we also have more demands in our lives today and stresses that perhaps any other generation has had. And I think it's important to recognize that, because sometimes we could feel bad about why do I have anxiety? Why do I have stress? Or why do I should be so grateful. I have food on the table. We're not dying from a starvation, somewhere. And we're not, we have so much, we live with so much plenty, but at the same time, whether it's technology, whether it's, all the connections that we have, a lot of people, family, friends, there's a lot to keep up with. There's a lot, society, there are many taxing demands on our lives today. And therefore, recognizing that to have the balance in our lives, or even this course, learning, training ourselves to focus on the positive, I think it's never been more important, because it's we live in a generation where there's just as much challenges as other generations, but in different ways, and it's and recognizing that it's okay. Anyone remember, we can't hear you unless you unmute yourself now.
Rabbi,
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I got in late today, but I am loving your messages. And I am a very unreligious type of Jewish woman, but I love, and I've told so many people about the fact that they're not stuck.
Oh.
And everybody loved it. I shared it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Nancy.
Yes, and thank you so much. And I hope to see you again when I'm in Flag. and I have an appointment I need to go. But thank you so much. I'm glad I
Wonderful.
caught it. I'm glad I caught
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. We always say over here at Chabad, it's better to have you here late than not to have you at all. So people come late to the synagogue all the time. I always say that it's most importantly, you're here, you showed up. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
And these are all recorded. So I don't know if it made it into this week's email, but we'll make sure that it goes into all the emails. So you could watch it if you missed some of it, or you could forward it to someone if you'd like. Cece, how's it going out in Montana? Wait 1 second.
Can't hear you. Cece's muted. There she goes.
Wait, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So Wyoming is very isolating.
Wyoming, sorry.
To be a Jew in Wyoming, it's pretty isolating. I was living in Torrington for a while, and I couldn't handle it. It was way too small. Like tractors literally go down the road. So I relocated to Cheyenne, and COVID has been kind of tough here. You know, like we're a state that didn't close down, and we wear masks, and I was furloughed for 5 weeks, so that was kind of tough. But I got to really look at myself and look at what I wanted, and I was able to take that time, which I'd never have the time, just to kind of pause and like reflect and to talk with God and figure out my next direction. And so now I'm back at work, and my favorite thing so far about COVID is that even though I'm, 13 hours away from my Jewish family, I get to see you guys on the screen. And I hope that even when this is all done, I hope that you still do something once a month or once every couple of weeks for all of the students that have went different ways, so that way we could all reconnect as one family. I think that's super important, and to see other Flagstaff locals and you guys, because you guys are so incredibly impactful to us. So
thank you. And we feel the same way, and it really is one of the blessings in disguise and the silver linings from all of this to be able to do this. This is we plan on continuing this because we never realized how many more people we could connect with on an ongoing basis, not just in the synagogue doors, but online. So this is we definitely plan on.
I think it's like my favorite thing to come out of COVID is I get to still interact with you guys. So
thank you.
Yeah.
So
Ivy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Cece, is so good to see you. Oh my God, I'm sending like a really big hug with lots and lots of love. I just, it's so, are you doing this put this with what works
What was that?
Say that again, Ivy.
weekly? Because I will add this to my work schedule.
Yes. Well, now there's 2 more weeks after this, and then we'll see after that. Maybe I'll continue something else, but this was a weekly 5 weeks in a row at 1 p.m. on Tuesday.
Okay, and am I totally missing the JLI also? Because I'm so.
Hi, Lena.
No, actually, this is the JLI. We ended up doing this one, and this is the format that we're doing it in. So the JLI offered 5 different courses, and we chose the one, positivity bias, and so this is the one that we're offering. But it's a different style than it's just focusing on stories, and it's shorter because I think it's easier for everyone, and we're doing it in the middle of the day because at night sometimes it's harder for us with all the kids putting everyone to bed, especially the kids not having school these days, the little ones. It makes it a lot easier to just do it in the middle of the day as opposed to at night. So that's and then we record it. So if anyone missed it, they could listen to it.
I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. I'm going to my next Zoom meeting. I've got another.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm Zooming.
Thanks for joining us, bro.
All right. You're welcome. We'll see you next week, Rabbi.
We'll see you.
Okay, be well, everybody. Hey, I want to say something positive. You all look fabulous.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Rabbi.
See you, Brian.
I think Chaya's out there somewhere. Bye, Chaya. I think I see your name. Okay, take care. Thank you.
Nice. It's really
Larry,
good.
how's it been for you with coaching and everything?
Who was
Hold on 1 second. Larry, hold on. Yeah.
So not much coaching going on. Actually, I've been home for basically 7 weeks.
Wow.
And we do some dry land work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for an hour. We talk to the team that by Zoom meeting, and then we watch them work out. But that's been about it. And hoping they are. I heard that the Flagstaff Athletic Club opened up their pool. I'm hoping we can open up our pool by June 1st and get some people back in the water so I can have.
Yeah. By the way, just for those who don't know, Larry is a swim coach at NAU. So, yeah, that's how have you been being at home for 7 weeks? It's are you like the Jack in the Box?
No. So I work out. I work out in the basement, and I have my bike on a trainer, and occasionally I go shopping for food and that kind of stuff. But
nice. Do you have trails near your house where you go out and where you live? Are there trails near you?
There are some. You know, I hate bike riding here in Flagstaff because the roads are, people are crazy. They don't treat bikers very nicely. When I lived in Oregon, that was bike riding heaven, and people liked you when you were on your bike. But here they try to get you. So
you're careful.
So I'm actually just riding on a trainer, and I watch movies on Netflix.
Nice. Okay, good. Listen, it's great that you're finding to be active even at home.
Yep.
Gary, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm getting used to doing nothing. I like it.
You sit out on the deck a lot? Oh, Stella.
Stella here is perfect. And
hi, Stella.
Hi, Stella, say hi.
You sit out. You go out to the deck.
Yeah.
That's nice. Looking out into that beautiful nature over there is amazing.
Right.
An amazing
and
spot.
I have a babysitter that's here all the time.
There you go. Beautiful.
Making
How are you doing?
I'm sorry?
Julian, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just working a lot.
Are you working from home or you go in?
Oh yeah, I just moved my computers because they were in my bedroom, so I moved for a change of scenery finally.
You moved it where?
Just downstairs.
Oh, you moved from okay.
Yeah. Need change of scenery.
Wow. So a bunch of Zoom meetings all day?
All day. Zoom and Microsoft Teams and emails.
Wow.
So
Wow.
don't open up too soon. It's gonna get worse.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the week. And I look forward to seeing you next week in the Zoom meeting. And like I said at the beginning, we are working on, how we're going to reopen Chabad. We don't know yet. We don't have all the answers, but in the next few weeks, I do believe we'll open up and have some sort of Shabbat service. And before we know it, we'll be back to normal, God willing. But for now, we're planning on how we're going to reopen safely for everyone who wants to join in person. So,
all right, thank you.
Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.